The mansion was silent, that heavy kind of silence that only comes when something deep and sacred has just been broken. Richardson Adewale, billionaire and real estate mogul in Ibadan, stood by the grand staircase of his Alalabosa estate mansion, fists clenched, voice trembling. Before him stood two boys, his son Henry, and beside him, barefoot and trembling, was a scrawny 12-year-old street boy named Daniel. The house staff whispered near the corridor, afraid to even breathe too loudly. On the dining table lay a torn mathematics notebook. Henry's handwriting filled one page, neat but wrong. The next page was Daniel's, small, rough, but correct in every line. Richardson's voice sliced through the tension. "Henry, are you telling me this boy has been teaching you your homework?" Henry's voice shook. "Yes, Daddy. Daniel helps me every day. He's my best friend." The billionaire's jaw tightened. His son, heir to an empire, learning from a homeless boy off the streets of Ibadan? What would people say? But then Daniel raised his head. His eyes were respectful yet steady, carrying a quiet strength that made the powerful man pause. "Sir," Daniel said softly, "I didn't mean any harm. I just wanted to help him understand." And suddenly, something in Richardson's chest cracked open. He saw not a ragged boy, but a reflection of who he once was, a child who had once walked barefoot in the dusty streets of Oyai, dreaming of something bigger. He turned away, exhaling slowly. Then, without another word, said to his driver, "Get the car ready." Everyone froze. "Sir, where are you going?" the butler asked carefully. Richardson looked back at Daniel, his tone softer. "To get him some shoes, and then I'm taking him home." Hey family waving and medium skin tone, welcome to today's story. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Globe showing Europe, Africa. I love connecting with everyone who supports these emotional African stories from all over the world. If you believe kindness can rewrite a destiny, please hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications, because what happens next in this story will stay with you for a long time. Long before he ever stepped foot inside the marble mansion of the Adewales, Daniel's world was the noise and dust of Ibadan's open streets. He was born near the Oyai market, the son of a petty trader who sold fruits by the roadside. His mother, weak from childbirth, died the night he was born. The neighbors said it was her fate. The hospital said it was exhaustion. Daniel never knew her face, only the faded photograph one of the traders once showed him, saying, "She was a strong woman. She smiled through her pain." By the age of 5, he was already begging. His father had disappeared before he could remember, and the streets became his home. Every day, he carried an empty tin of milk, shaking it with the rhythm of the city. "A beg helps small Pekin," he'd say to strangers passing through Dugby, hoping someone would drop a coin. He learned quickly how to survive, when to run from the street touts, when to hide under the stalls when rain poured, and where to find leftover bread behind the suya stand near Bodija in the evenings. But Daniel was different from the other street boys. He had a secret hunger, not just for food, but for learning. He'd sit behind a kiosk where a private school stood across the street, listening to the teacher through the open window. While the other boys chased cars for coins, Daniel whispered numbers to himself. 2 times 2 4. 3 times 3 9. He'd write on the dusty ground with a stick, copying the shapes he saw on the blackboard. One day, a teacher noticed him crouched outside. "You there, what's your name?" she asked. He hesitated. "Daniel, Ma." She smiled sadly. "You like school?" "Yes, Ma. I want to learn." She wanted to let him in, but when she asked about his parents, he lowered his eyes and said nothing. By the next day, he was gone again, back to the streets. At night, Daniel slept on flattened cartons behind a locked provision store. The stars above Ibadan glittered faintly through the harmattan haze. Sometimes he'd whisper to himself, "One day, I'll be more than this." He didn't know how it would happen. He only knew he couldn't stop dreaming. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the smell of roasted plantain filled the air, Daniel saw something that would change his life forever. A black SUV, glossy, foreign, the kind that made street kids pause, stopped at a traffic light. Inside sat a young boy about his age, wearing a crisp uniform and holding a lunchbox. Their eyes met through the car window. Daniel expected the usual, pity, or worse, the look people gave him like he was invisible. But this boy, Henry, didn't look away. Instead, he smiled. Then, he did something no one had ever done before. He opened his lunchbox and waved for Daniel to come closer. The driver hesitated, but Henry insisted. "Uncle, please stop. I want to give him something." The window rolled down. Henry stretched out his small hand, holding a sandwich. "Here. My name is Henry. What's yours?" Daniel blinked. "Daniel," he said softly. "Nice to meet you," Henry smiled. "Eat." For Daniel, it was just food. But it was also something else, kindness. The first he'd felt in years. That small act planted a seed that would one day change both their lives. The next morning, Daniel woke to the sound of buses honking and traders calling out prices. The smell of roasted groundnuts filled the air near the junction at Bodija. He rubbed his eyes, still half in a dream of that soft-faced boy who had given him food the day before. He thought it was a one-time kindness, the sort of miracle that happens once in a beggar's life. But 2 days later, as he sat by the same traffic light, the same black SUV stopped again. The tinted window rolled down. There was Henry, smiling brightly, waving like they were old friends. "Daniel, you're here." Daniel blinked, unsure how to respond. "You remember me?" Henry laughed. "Of course. I brought you something today." He reached into his school bag and handed him a clean notebook and a pencil. "I thought you'd like to learn." For a moment, Daniel couldn't speak. His throat tightened. No one had ever given him anything that wasn't pity. Thank you," he stammered, clutching the notebook like it was gold. That became their little ritual. Every morning, Henry would beg his driver to stop near the junction before heading to school. Sometimes he'd hand Daniel a snack, sometimes old textbooks. And Daniel, sharp and curious, began teaching himself to read from those pages, under the bridge, near the market, by the dim light of passing cars. One sunny afternoon, when school had just closed, Henry spotted Daniel across the road. "Daniel," he called, waving him over. "Come, sit with me for a bit." They sat on a low cement block behind a roadside kiosk. Henry unwrapped his lunch and shared it evenly, just like always. Daniel pointed to the school crest on Henry's uniform. "Do you learn English there?" Henry nodded. "Yes. And mathematics. I don't like maths though, it's too hard." Daniel smiled shyly. "I can help you. I like numbers." Henry tilted his head. "You? You can do maths." Daniel grinned, a rare light in his eyes. "Try me." Henry scribbled something with a stick on the dusty ground. "If a car travels 20 kilometers per hour." Before he could finish, Daniel was already calculating in his head. "In 2 hours, 40 kilometers." Henry blinked. "How did you do that so fast?" Daniel shrugged. "I just see it in my head." And from that day, a friendship was born, one that defied class, comfort, and logic. Every afternoon, after school, Henry would sneak out from the car and meet Daniel by the street corner. The driver disapproved, but Henry always said, "Just 10 minutes, Uncle. Please." Daniel would teach him in the sand, spelling, numbers, even short stories. In return, Henry shared his lunch and sometimes old exercise books his teachers had thrown away. They laughed together, their laughter echoing between the busy streets of Ibadan. One rich, one poor, yet their hearts met somewhere in the middle. Sometimes, Henry would ask questions that made Daniel smile. "Do you ever wish you could go to school?" "Every day," Daniel replied softly. "Then I'll tell my dad to help you one day." Daniel chuckled sadly. "People like your dad don't help boys like me." Henry frowned. "My dad isn't bad. He's just busy." Then came the day that changed everything. It was Friday, and the city was alive with the chaos of closing time. Henry's driver parked at their usual spot while waiting for the traffic to clear. Henry spotted Daniel nearby, reading an old torn newspaper. He quickly waved him over. "Let's do maths before Daddy comes home." Daniel smiled, sitting on the pavement. He drew shapes in the dust, while Henry copied from his school notes. The two were so focused, they didn't notice the black Prado SUV that had quietly pulled up behind them, or the man stepping out of it, adjusting his gold wristwatch. It was Richardson Adewale himself. He had left work early that day. When his driver told him Henry always insisted on stopping near the junction, he grew suspicious. So he followed. Now from the other side of the road, Richardson watched his son sitting on the bare floor beside a homeless boy, laughing, learning, completely unaware of the eyes on them. For a long minute, Richardson didn't move. Something twisted in his chest, confusion, shame, curiosity. Finally, he called out sharply, "Henry." Henry jumped up, startled. The traffic noise died in his ears. "Daddy." Daniel froze, heart pounding. "Get in the car. Now." Richardson's tone left no room for argument. Henry hesitated. "But Daddy, he's my friend." "Now." Daniel lowered his head. He didn't speak. He knew what was coming. The same rejection he'd faced all his life. As Henry climbed reluctantly into the SUV, their eyes met through the tinted glass. Daniel gave a small, sad smile, one that said thank you for the friendship, even if it was about to end. But fate wasn't done with them yet. Because that night, as Richardson replayed the scene in his mind, his son sitting in the dirt beside a barefoot boy teaching him homework, something inside him refused to stay silent. He had to know who that boy was. The Adewale mansion in Alalabosa estate glimmered under the evening sun, but inside, the atmosphere was anything but golden. The clink of cutlery was the only sound as Henry sat quietly at the long dining table, his food untouched. Richardson Adewale sat at the head of the table, his face unreadable. His wife had passed away years ago. The silence she left behind still haunted the corners of that massive home. Finally, Richardson spoke. "Henry." The boy's fork froze halfway to his mouth. "Yes, Daddy. I heard you've been leaving the car before reaching school and spending time with a homeless boy." Henry's voice wavered. "His name is Daniel, sir." Richardson's eyes narrowed. "And what business do you have with a boy like that?" Henry hesitated, his small voice trembling. "He's my friend, Daddy. He helps me with my homework." "Your friend?" Richardson's tone cracked with disbelief. "Do you have any idea who you are? You are my son. You don't belong on the streets playing with beggars." Henry's eyes filled instantly. "He's not a beggar, Daddy. He's smart, smarter than anyone in my class." Richardson slammed his palm on the table. The cutlery jumped. Enough. The silence that followed was deafening. Henry bit his lip, his tears falling silently into his plate. But even as Richardson looked away, a strange unease stirred in him. His son's words echoed in his mind. "He's smarter than anyone in my class." That night, long after Henry had gone to bed, Richardson sat alone in his study. The only light came from a desk lamp, glowing faintly against a wall filled with family portraits and framed achievements. He poured himself a drink, but didn't touch it. He couldn't stop thinking about that boy, Daniel. The way Henry had defended him, the way his voice had cracked not out of defiance, but truth. He muttered to himself, "Smarter than his classmates from the streets? Impossible." Still, curiosity gnawed at him. Finally, he called for his driver. "Tund," he said, voice low. "You know that boy my son has been meeting near the junction?" "Yes, sir. The one they call Daniel." Richardson nodded. "Find out where he stays." The driver hesitated. "Sir, that area, I market, it's not safe." "I didn't ask if it's safe," Richardson replied, standing. "I asked if you can find him." Tund bowed slightly. "Yes, sir." The next morning, the convoy drove through the heart of Ibadan. The further they went, the narrower the streets became. Red dust rising, market women shouting. Danfo buses honking endlessly. They stopped near a cluster of wooden stalls behind Oyai Market. Children ran barefoot, chasing tires. Traders haggled over yams and pepper. Amid it all, Richardson spotted him. A small boy crouched beside a kiosk, scribbling numbers on a torn piece of carton with a stick. Daniel didn't notice the black SUV until a shadow fell over him. He looked up and froze. The man standing before him looked like someone out of another world. Tall, well-dressed, watch gleaming in the sunlight. "Daniel." Richardson said quietly. The boy's voice shook. "Yes, sir." Richardson's eyes softened slightly. "You're the one teaching my son?" Daniel nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." I didn't mean to cause trouble. He just wanted help with his maths. Richardson looked around, the piles of scrap, the broken stalls, the smell of fried oil and dust. You live here? Daniel's gaze dropped to the ground. Yes, sir. Behind the shop when they close. Where are your parents? My mother died when I was born. I never met my father. Something flickered in Richardson's eyes, a memory buried deep, painful. He took a slow breath. Do you like teaching Henry? Daniel nodded quickly. Yes, sir. He's kind. And I like helping him learn. For a long moment, Richardson just stared at him. This boy, barefoot and skinny, with nothing but a tattered shirt. He spoke with a calmness that made him seem older than his years. He reached into his pocket and brought out a wad of Naira notes. Here, he said gruffly. Take this. Buy yourself clothes, food, whatever you need. Daniel shook his head gently. Thank you, sir. But I don't want money. Richardson frowned. Then what do you want? Daniel looked up at him, eyes bright with a quiet longing. I just want a chance to learn, sir. For a brief second, the world around them stilled. The market noise faded. The smell of dust and sweat dissolved into memory. Richardson saw himself, a much younger version, barefoot and hungry, sitting on a similar street decades ago, whispering those same words to no one. I just want to learn. He swallowed hard, his throat tight. Get in the car, Daniel, he said suddenly. Daniel's eyes widened. Sir. You heard me. Get in. You're coming with me. Daniel stepped back, confused. Sir, I can't. I don't belong there. Richardson's voice softened, almost breaking. You do now. As the SUV drove away, the market women whispered, children ran after the car, shouting, Daniel Donhammer, oh. But Daniel wasn't thinking about money or luck. He pressed his face to the glass, staring as the city rolled by, the place that had been his whole world shrinking behind him. For the first time in his life, he didn't know where he was going. But for the first time, too, he wasn't afraid. He was going home. When the SUV rolled into the Adewale compound that evening, Daniel thought he was dreaming. The gates alone looked taller than anything he had ever seen. The gravel driveway glistened under the evening light, and the mansion, an elegant white building with glass windows that reflected the sunset, stood like a palace from another world. The air smelled of flowers instead of dust. The guard saluted as the car drove past. Daniel's hands trembled as he held his torn shirt close. Sir, he whispered, are you sure I can enter here? Richardson glanced at him from the front seat. You've entered already. As the car stopped, the butler, Mrs. Adebayo, rushed out in confusion. Sir, welcome. Should I prepare dinner? Then her eyes fell on Daniel. Her brows furrowed. Sir, who is this? He'll be staying with us, Richardson said, stepping out. Find him something decent to wear. Mrs. Adebayo blinked, uncertain if she'd heard right. Stay with us, sir? Yes, Richardson said sharply. He's a friend of Henry's. That's all you need to know for now. She nodded quickly, but as she led Daniel through the grand hallway, her expression said what her lips didn't dare. What is a street boy doing here? Inside, everything dazzled him. The marble floor felt too smooth, the lights too bright. Paintings of people in fine clothes stared down from the walls like silent judges. Daniel walked carefully, afraid to step wrong. Henry came running down the staircase, excitement lighting his face. Daniel, you're here. Daniel smiled shyly. Your daddy said I can stay. Henry turned to his father, eyes wide. Really, Daddy? He's staying. Richardson nodded. For now, yes. Henry ran and hugged him tightly. Thank you, Daddy. For a brief second, something softened in Richardson's chest. Something he hadn't felt in years. All right, he muttered, clearing his throat. Go and show him around. Henry pulled Daniel up the stairs, past rooms bigger than any shop Daniel had ever slept behind. This is my room, Henry said proudly, opening a door. Toys everywhere. Books. A small desk by the window. Daniel stood frozen. You can share with me if you want, Henry said eagerly. Daddy will get you your own bed. Daniel smiled faintly. I'm fine, Henry. I can sleep anywhere. Henry frowned. Not here you won't. My friend can't be sleeping on the floor. Their laughter filled the room, light and innocent, until Mrs. Adebayo returned with folded clothes. "Here," she said stiffly. "These belonged to Master Henry when he was smaller." Daniel took them gently. "Thank you, Ma." Her lips twitched. "We don't say Ma here. Just be respectful, all right?" "Yes, Ma, sorry, I mean yes," Daniel said quickly. She sighed and left. Henry shook his head. "Don't mind her. She's just like that." Daniel smiled faintly. "It's okay. I'm used to it." Later that night, as Abaddon slept and crickets sang outside, Daniel lay in the softest bed he'd ever known. The sheets smelled like soap. For the first time, he didn't have to curl up against cold concrete. But he couldn't sleep. He thought of the market women, the other boys, the noise of Dugby. He thought of his mother, a face he had never seen, but always imagined smiling down at him. Then he whispered softly into the darkness, "I made it, Mama. I don't know how long they'll let me stay, but I made it." A tear slid quietly down his cheek. The next morning, Daniel followed Henry to school, not as a driver's helper or a street boy, but as someone's guest. He sat quietly in the car, wearing clean clothes for the first time. At the gate of Premier Heights Academy, murmurs spread like wildfire. "Isn't that the street boy? Why is he in Master Henry's car? Did the driver bring him?" Henry ignored them all. "Come on, Daniel," he said, holding his friend's hand. The teacher frowned when she saw him. "Henry, who is this?" "My friend," Henry said proudly. "My dad said he's staying with us. Can he sit at the back while I'm in class?" The teacher hesitated. "That's unusual." Henry stood firm. "Please, Ma. He won't disturb anyone." After a long pause, she sighed. "All right, but only for today." During lunch break, Henry snuck Daniel half his sandwich again. "This is still your favorite, right?" he teased. Daniel laughed softly. "You remember." Then Henry handed him a notebook. "Here. I told Daddy you want to learn. He said you can use my old books." Daniel opened the pages, tracing the clean lines of letters and numbers. His throat tightened. "Thank you, Henry. I'll never forget this." Henry grinned. "Just promise me something." "What?" "When we grow up, we'll still be best friends. Even when you're smarter than me." Daniel laughed, tears in his eyes. "Deal." That evening, when Richardson returned home, he stood quietly by the hallway, watching Daniel and Henry bent over a book, reading together on the living room couch. He saw his son, happier, freer, laughing again. He saw Daniel, eager, humble, full of light. And for the first time in years, the house didn't feel so empty. Mrs. Adebayo passed by whispering, "Sir, people will talk. A street boy under your roof." Richardson's voice was calm but firm. "Let them talk. Sometimes, life brings people into your home for reasons beyond explanation." That night, as Daniel drifted to sleep, he overheard Richardson talking softly on the phone in his study. "Yes. I want to enroll him. I'll handle the paperwork myself. His name is Daniel. No surname yet." Daniel's heart skipped a beat. He didn't know what that meant exactly, but he felt something shift inside him. Hope. If this story has touched you so far, tell me in the comments. What would you have done if you were in Daniel's shoes that first night in the mansion? And don't forget to subscribe. More powerful true-to-life stories like this are coming your way every week. Months passed, and the Adewale mansion was no longer the same. Laughter echoed in hallways that used to be silent. Henry was doing better in school, more confident than ever. And Daniel, once a street boy, was now enrolled at Premier Heights Academy. He wore a uniform. He carried books. He answered teachers with "Yes, Ma," and "No, sir," the way Henry had taught him. The other students stared at first, whispering behind his back, "Isn't he that boy from the streets? How did he get in here?" But Daniel just smiled and kept studying. Every time he opened a book, he remembered the dusty kiosk by Oyai Market and promised himself never to waste the chance life had given him. At home, even Mrs. Adebayo had softened. She'd leave extra puff-puff on his plate and pretend it was by mistake. But while the mansion grew warmer, something darker was brewing beneath the surface, a test that would reveal what both Daniel and Richardson were truly made of. One afternoon, a call came in. Richardson was in his study, reading the day's reports, when his phone buzzed. It was from the hospital. Mr. Adewale, there's been an accident. It's about your son, Henry. The glass in his hand fell and shattered. Within minutes, the mansion was chaos. The driver rushed him to University College Hospital. Daniel, hearing the news, ran barefoot after the car until it disappeared down the road. At the hospital, Richardson burst into the emergency ward. Henry lay on the bed, hooked up to oxygen, his small face pale. The nurse explained quickly he was hit by a bike while crossing the road near the school gate. We're doing our best, sir. Richardson stood frozen. His world, his only son, looked so fragile. He sank into the chair beside the bed and whispered, "Please, God, not him. Take everything else. Just not him." Tears, real tears, rolled down the face of a man the city called unshakable. When Daniel arrived, panting and drenched in sweat, the nurse tried to stop him. "You can't go in." But when Richardson saw him, he said quietly, "Let him in." Daniel walked up slowly, eyes brimming. "Sir, how is he?" Richardson's voice was barely a whisper. "They don't know yet." Without thinking, Daniel took Henry's hand and began to pray, softly, earnestly. "God, please don't take my only friend. He gave me food when no one else did. Please, if you're listening, heal him. Take my strength, my breath, anything, just let him live." The room was silent, except for the sound of the machines. Even Richardson bowed his head. Minutes later, the doctor entered, his expression calm but serious. "He's stable now, sir. He'll recover, but he needs rest." Richardson exhaled shakily, covering his face with both hands. For the first time, he let his emotions show. He turned to Daniel, voice breaking. "You love him that much?" Daniel nodded, tears falling. "He's my only family, sir." Richardson's jaw tightened, his heart full. He placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "No, Daniel. You have more than one family now." Weeks later, Henry returned home, cheerful and full of life. The house celebrated, the staff smiling like never before. But Richardson had been quiet, thoughtful. Something in him had shifted since that night in the hospital. One Saturday morning, he called Daniel into his study. The boy entered nervously. "Yes, sir?" Richardson gestured for him to sit. "Daniel, when I was a child, I wasn't born rich either. My father was a tailor in Oyo. I worked hard, climbed high, but somewhere along the way, I forgot what it meant to be hungry, to dream like you do." Daniel listened quietly, his small hands folded on his lap. Richardson continued, voice low but firm. "You reminded me. You reminded my son of kindness, and you reminded me of humanity." He took a deep breath and pulled out a file. "I've decided something." Daniel blinked. "Sir." Richardson smiled gently. "From today, you are not just my son's friend. You are my son too." Daniel's heart stopped. "Sir, what do you mean?" "I mean," Richardson said, sliding the document toward him, "I've started your adoption process. You'll bear my name, Daniel Adewale." The boy's lips trembled. His vision blurred. "Sir, I don't deserve." "You do," Richardson interrupted softly. "Because family isn't about blood, Daniel. It's about love. And you've given us more love than we ever imagined." Daniel stood up and hugged him, sobbing. "Thank you, sir. I'll make you proud. I promise." Richardson smiled through his own tears. "You already have my son." Months later, on a sunny morning, both boys walked together through the same market where Daniel once begged. The vendors couldn't believe their eyes. "Is that not Daniel?" "Ah, see how fine he looks." "He don blow." Daniel smiled humbly and handed out small food packages to the children on the street. When Henry asked why, Daniel said simply, "Because once someone gave me food too." Richardson watched from a distance, pride shining in his eyes. The street that once symbolized Daniel's struggle had now become the place of his victory. That night, as the city lights of Ibadan shimmered, Daniel stood by his bedroom window and whispered, "Mama, I have a family now." And for the first time in his life, he truly felt at home. If this story touched your heart, drop a broken heart red heart in the comments and tell me, do you believe kindness can change someone's destiny? Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell icon bell. Because every week, we bring you stories that remind us what it truly means to be human.